pants, for like sporting pants. So he has a pair of those pants because they did not have enough of the Horizon light blue uniforms in service. Early in the war, 1914, the French went to war with a blue overcoat that looked like it was from the Napoleonic era, a blue and red, bright red hat, and red pantaloon rouge, red pants. And they looked like toy soldiers, like from the Nutcracker. They were a holdover from the Napoleonic era where you still needed to figure out who your troops were because you couldn't communicate easily in the battlefield. Smokeless cartridge or smokeless powder cartridge, so you can't see the enemy when they're firing. Everybody, all the guns prior to that had black powder, and the problem with black powder is that when you fire, there's a big puff of smoke. So if there's a guy way off in there and he's camouflaged in the woods, as soon as he fires, you're gonna see poof, like a firework going off. You're like, that's where he's at. So you can shoot all the machine guns and mortars at that guy. Or if there's a firing line, you know where the enemy is. When you went to smokeless powder, it made it a lot easier. Plus, the smokeless powder burns so fast, you actually get higher velocity bullets, so you can now reach out and touch somebody. You can also use smaller bullets because now the smaller bullets are being fired at much higher velocities. And this is an 8mm cartridge. Everybody said 8mm is too small, but it will easily go through a person, maybe two people, back to back at a mile. So it's an effective weapon. Do you want to go ahead and fire your LeBel? You can see that he's got a long bayonet as well that goes on the rifle. All the infantry in World War I carried 16-inch bayonets as a standard because you want to reach off and touch someone. Go ahead and fire. So the LeBel used a rim cartridge and it packed quite a wallop. That was a standard weapon. That, along with the Berthier rifle, got the French through World War I, and also were being used by reserve units in World War II who had not gotten modernized rifles. The French also had the distinction of having the last officially adopted bolt-action rifle that was designed, built for an infantry in the late 30s, because everybody else was thinking about a semi-automatic weapon, which they did after World War II. Thank you very much. They're actually clogs, and in the rear area, like in the trenches, it's much more comfortable to wear clogs rather than wearing your boots that were usually wet and soaked through. The French would usually carry a backpack where they carried 2 pairs of boots, so they'd always have at least one pair that was not soaking wet, so you don't get trench foot. Go ahead with the American. Can you step forward? So the 2 guys that you see that we did first, that's what the armies looked like in 1915 fighting each other. In 1917, the Americans got involved. Wilson ran on a platform as U.S. president. I'm going to keep us out of that foreign war. That's a European problem. We're America first. We're not going to worry about that. And within a year or so, there's so many sinkings of passenger liners that killed so many Americans, thousands of them, in fact, including the Lusitania, that the Americans changed their mind. Public sentiment changed that we need to get involved in this because they're killing Americans, and they're also disrupting free trade on the open seas with submarine warfare. So the Americans threw their lot in with the Allies, and this is what they sent over. You will note that he has a British helmet. It's not American. The Americans made those and continued making them up until just before World War II. But they were copying the British. The British actually went to the Tower of London and said, we need steel helmets. What do you got? Like, well, we have all these. And like, great. That one from the 1200s would be perfect. Why don't you just modernize it a little bit and put a chin strap on it? And that's what the Army used, and the Americans adopted that because they were equipped with 0 helmets in 1917. Do you have a 1917 or a Springfield?
Springfield. Springfield.
It looks like an Eddystone.
I believe so.
The Americans actually did not have enough Springfields, and when Wilson went to the Springfield Arsenal and said, we need 14 million guns right now, they said, yeah,
Do it one more time.
platform to keep us out of the war, so there's no budget for it. So it'll take us about 1922 or 23 to make that many rifles. So the Americans went around and said, who's building stuff? And Remington was making a P-14 rifle as a variation of the Enfield, and they said, great, we'll take 4 million of those. Those were already in mass production. They just rechambered them for U.S. rounds.
Your phone has image
and most of the
stabilization.
U.S. Army was actually equipped with a British-style rifle. The Springfield did not catch up with production until very late in the war. He's got a gas mask satchel that's in the front of him because by 1917, gas warfare was a daily life. You keep your gas mask.
Don't take one long video.
On
Let's stop recording.
And you'll also notice that all 3 of these guys have ankle boots, except for the guy with the he doesn't have his ankle boots on. The French guy has his clogs. But the ankle boots were an economy measure because most armies were cheap and trying to figure out how to cheaply equip their guys. So they had short boots, and then they would use leg wraps that would actually wrap around. It was a lot easier to break off mud and replace those than it was to use the extra leather for tall boots. Go ahead and fire when ready. Thank you. Keep in mind that these are bolt-action rifles. They have a slow rate of fire.
I'm teaching her how to drive a stick. That's a new record, though.
It's because I'm a firefighter.
Yeah.
Tank, it's pretty dope.
So they slowed it down a little bit, but the Americans now have time, if they want, they can go and support for artillery. You see that some gas rounds are landing in the field, and that poison gas, or mustard gas, could burn your lungs, burn your eyes, cause permanent blindness in some cases. It also caused huge blisters to form all over the body. And when that happened, they broke open. It actually it spread all over to the rest of the body very easily. So it caused casualties that would take on the line, required to go to a field hospital, that it would require treatment years after the war. The Veterans Administration in the United States was actually formed after World War I to care for the mass number of gas casualties that caused World War I. You can see the Germans have walked down, they're trying to get their masks on, they're kind of stuck, and they realize that they're getting heavy resistance, and they thought, you may see that they start to pull back because they realize that they're getting strong resistance, and it's kind of suicide to cross a large field like this, and holes and things like that in the wire, and be able to clear out the Germans bunker by bunker. If you take a tour of the trench, you'll see on that side that it's not a straight line, it's zigzags. And the reason for the zigzagging is that once you get enemy infantry into the trench, you can't just shoot on a line that's half a mile long. You only got like 20 yards at most. Then you got to go to a
He's done with that. You hold this and send around the tank real quick. Just send it around the tank. Watch the Schneider.
And I made.
It might not have been.
Master Sergeant.
It might not have been very good, but it was a nice
They
tank.
asked me that I wanted, when I got out of the 12th grade, that I want to join the Army or something. I said, no offense, but that's not for me. I like the ROTC, and the only reason I really took it, because it's an easy class.
Easy class, and you can make a lot of friends. And you got to go do some fun things. Totally agree. I honestly
Hit the steel house. That's not going to stop the ball. It'll protect you from shrapnel, from your artillery rounds. That will not protect you from the ball, especially dead eye. It'll go right through it like a hot knife through butter. So yeah, most of the time you're going to be underneath this, down. We do have the firing step, so when it comes time you're firing, you're going to step up onto that so you can get over to see over the top. The ladders along the way, so you can go over the top on those times that you're going to attack, and they call it going over the top. So you're going to do that. Most of the time you're going to be down here. You're either going to be down, kind of sitting against this, protecting you, or in the bunkers. You can walk into bunkers, watch your head. A lot, especially you tall people, you're going to have to duck. So don't bang your head in there. But go ahead and go in there if you want to and take a look around in there. Those would actually be underground. A little harder for us to build it that way, but they would actually be underground to protect you from artillery. These, as they are artillery, you'll go right through it. But bunkers were a big part of it.
yours?
Germans,
I find this stuff. Left and right.
they actually got a hold of a bunch of concrete.
Put them in your pocket.
They actually built concrete bunkers. So they actually had some of the better trenches
put 'em in your pocket.
on their side.
But make sure it's a pocket away from your skin, because it doesn't burn
They'll
you.
find those concrete bunkers in that France. Still in decent condition. They're actually finding trays of ammunition. Grenades and ammunition.
Do you want to hold on to them? Or? Do you want to hold on to them?
Packed in mud, of course, it has
I am just holding these away because the smell. Put all of them just in a pocket, like your pocket back there. This one? Oh, yeah, go ahead. To put them away from the skin.
given that much more protection. But this is where they lived. Now they had different, this would be the frontline trenches here. So this is where you're going to be seeing most of the fighting. You had 3 or 4 behind that were reserved. They were all connected. So they could bring reserves up and you kind of rotate through. When you rotate to the rear, that's when you kind of get a respite. And after so much time, you get a respite. But it still was, you're spending, a couple of weeks at a time on the front line. We call it PTSD today. They called it shell shock back then. I think we should still call it shell shock because I think it's a much better description and it's not as nice. A lot of people, you think, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It sounds nice, so it's not so big a deal. Shell shock. That kind of right straight to the point, isn't it? But that's what they called it back then, and a lot of soldiers suffered from that, amongst other things. Again, a lot of disease going on too. Somebody was asking about the bathroom when you're on the front line. They had sections designated. They had a log. You'd sit on a log and do your business. Now all that would leach through all the mud and water throughout the whole trench then too. And of course, you had rats, which good eating when you're hungry. On the front line, getting food sometimes is tough, so you catch a rat, you cook it up, good stuff right there. Dead bodies going to be everywhere. Smell of death's going to be everywhere. Honestly, just think of hell on earth. That was life in a trench. It was not pretty. People try to glorify war. It is not. It is an ugly mess. And World War I trench warfare was probably some of the worst. Again, people we talk about like Civil War and the improvements in technology and weaponry and how it affected. They're still using old tactics. The weaponry had machine guns in that, especially at the beginning of the war. They were still doing cavalry charges. Well, they found out really quick against maximum machine gun. Horse cavalry doesn't work very well because they'll just mow the horses down. Okay, so and the horses are big targets too. So again, a lot had to change, but that stagnant warfare, you're just shooting at each other constantly. Go up over the tack, you may gain a few feet or a few yards, and then the next day you lose it again. It was back and forth, back and forth. So a lot of times Watch your head.
Hello.
Hello.
Did the Germans use triangle bayonets?
No. Most by that time were using blade bayonets. They were outlawed.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Have a nice day.
I think the Russians were the only ones that weren't using. They were using the plus.
Can I pick that up?
Go ahead. Yep, those are good. Yeah, my guess.
Oopsie.
Yeah, if you find rounds, that's fine. Just make sure you check if there isn't a dimple in the primer. So if you look back here, if there's not a dimple, it's unspent. Make sure you get it to a reenactor.
Okay. Thank you.
Watch your step there. Don't do it out here. You're gonna stick in the mud if you do that back here. How you doing, guys? Are you ready for trench warfare? Are you ready to join the German Army?
That's not
Kaiser?
Poland. That's not East Prussia, is it?
Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Any questions? Yeah, don't step in the water. You don't want to have to saw your foot off.
There you are. You want to go in there? That's the realistic experience. Oh yeah, it's kind of wet. Wow, my phone's exposure is so high. Gas masks.
Very weak and they could collapse.
And they're not gonna collapse. They're just really weak. Yeah.
And what's the hole here for? Ah, okay. Yeah,
It gets mighty cold. Actually, with the breeze right now in this hole,
yeah, because it's knocking that wind off down here. It feels pretty good. That's fun.
yeah, it's nice down here. That's why I usually hang out the trench.
Some guys that are from reserve regiments here, though, that are also using the more archaic Model 88 edition rifle for 1888. It was the first metallic cartridge, smokeless powder rifle that was adopted by the German army, but it had some horrible shortfalls, so they replaced the rifle in less than 10 years. The Americans, on the other side, were equipped with Springfields, and they're equipped with Eddystone Remington Arms M1970 rifles. The Eddystone was actually a British-designed rifle called the P14. It was being made by Remington. Because the British didn't have enough capacity to produce it because they're too busy making Enfields. And when the war broke out, America was caught off guard. They said, well, we need 1 million rifles right now. Springfield arsenal said, well, we could probably have this to you by 22 or 23. They said, no, we need it right now. So they contracted with Remington Arms to just change the caliber or the cartridge that went into the gun, and they mass-produced those. These are already in full production. And most of the U.S. Army was actually equipped with these Eddystone Remington P17s, or M1917s that were M19s. The Springfields finally caught up with production by the end of the war, but by that point in time, most of the units in the field were actually equipped with the 17s. The British Army is equipped with Enfields. The Enfield number 1, they could take 10 rounds within their clips, and it gave a lot more magazine capacity. These guys are pulling back now, it seems, because they realize that they're getting blocked down, and they don't want to go. They don't want to go any further. They're trying to pull all the wounded back to their lines. And this right here is kind of a good illustration of what the trench warfare was really about. Is that everybody bogged down, and everybody's pretty much evenly matched. The rifles per side, even the trench mortars, artillery, and the machine guns are all pretty comparable to what you would have had, whether you were Austro-Hungarian or German or British or American or French in 1917, 1918. But one of the developments that came up, poison gas was one of those technological developments they thought would help, and it really didn't help. But what did help were tanks. And what you see rolling onto the field right now is a Schneider C-17 or C-16 1916 vintage tank. It's built on a tractor chassis that were commercially available for farming, and they built a box structure on it. It was originally classed as a artillery trailer, and all the insignia that you'll see with the guys that are on the tank crew are crossed cannons, because they were originally seen as cannon carriers to bring your cannons forward and use it as a mobile pillbox. Others saw them as mobile armored land ships or land battleships that could travel across no man's land to fire artillery and machine guns up close so the infantry could follow behind and take the positions. The Germans were slow to adopt tanks and didn't really do that until 1918 and produced very, very few of them. They were very, very prone to mechanical breakdown rather than actually getting across the field. The French actually were the first to develop and deploy a tank, which is this one right here. And this tank was also the first tank to support U.S. infantry in combat ever in history in the Battle of Montigny. When the Americans for the first time stood on their own to go attack a French and retake a French town from Germans on a high ground in northern France. But they were supported by French tanks and French sappers that came across the field, similar to what you're seeing here, to actually give them flamethrowers, assault troops, and of course the tank. The tank is armed with two Hotchkiss 1914 machine guns that are on either side of the tank in those ball turrets. They are also equipped with the 75mm short barrel gun that's facing us on that side, just above the name George III. And the 75mm gun was designed with this, with only a 3-foot barrel, a full-size artillery shell, and a very short range with a small cartridge. So it was built to fire a couple hundred yards, rather than 2 or 3 miles like a traditional piece of artillery. But the idea was you could pull up to a trench just like they did. You just start taking out the positions along. You can see that as he's firing, he's trying to take out that trench mortar from the far end as they're trying to return fire. Because one large round from a 170mm trench mortar will be enough to take out that tank if you direct it, because the armor was pretty thin. It was only about a 1/4 inch thick. The Hotchkiss on the side, they're on either side of the tank was designed so you can pull this thing right up to the trench, and you can actually fire into the trench from either direction. What the key would do is be able to point the tank at the target that you want, put the tank commander and tell them how to move the tank, which is why it's at an angle, so they could fire on the machine gun positions and the strong points within the German lines. They also had the supporting infantry moving up behind using the tank pillbox since it's bulletproof. Moving up. Some of these guys carry telephone wire, and they're actually stringing stuff from a signal section because they need to maintain communications when they go to the other side of the no man's land, because otherwise they may have no idea what's going on from the other trench. If they are having success and they start to infiltrate into the second or third or fourth line of the trenches, they would need to know that so they could send follow-up reinforcements and supplies, water and food, and then cut areas of the line so they could build new trenches to connect the field in between with trenches so they can move across it without being shot at. One of the guys with the signal section that are hanging back by this small car, it also has a pigeon pack. It's a backpack with a wicker basket, and it's full of pigeons, so they could actually release pigeons with messages attached to their ankles that would go back to their roost, wherever that may be, and you could move it around and they'd be able to home in and know exactly where they came from, and they'd be able to deliver messages back that way. It was an efficient way of doing things in the time before all the modern technologies that we have for communications today. It looks like they've neutralized the German lines. Once they were able to neutralize Germans at one side and pummel it with some 75mm direct artillery fire, they were able to move in and infiltrate the trenches. And now they're pulling the German prisoners out, and they will be marching them off for interrogation and for POW internment camps. most of the time when the Germans in 1918 were backed into a corner and they saw that it was hopeless, most people did not fight to the last man. As you might see in movies, most of them were willing to surrender because they wanted to try to survive the war. And that seems to be about it. So we really appreciate you guys coming out today. And anybody who's going to attend the silent film that is over at the main museum center, the recommendation from the museum is that you take your car, if you're parked in the lot behind us right now, and you could drive over to the museum and park in the main lot, so you don't have to worry about trying to get back over to your car, which would be a little bit of a walk. So thank you very much for coming out today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask the reenactors, and we thank you for coming.
Wow. Saint Shimon. Let's go look at the airplane. I don't think you ever got a good look at it. No. Are you sure? Are you sure? Hell, we didn't even go into the main museum. That sucks. Or any of these buildings.
Do you want to go through the main museum?
We don't have to, but... Because I did yesterday, but... Okay, but it's gotta be somewhat quick. Whoa, airplane.
Wouldn't care, would you?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think he said to just go to his truck and go down.
Can't cross the line, guys. However, those were folded up yesterday, slightly. Gazette office. Let me just use my arm for this. Huge ass. Boring, boring, boring. Skibbity Riz. That's gonna just be random. Completely random.
Yeah, that is really weird.
Skibbity. Yummers.
Moving everybody towards the exit, so it's closed now.
Alright. Alright. Bye. Well, it was worth a skibbity try. Jail, Clark, whoa. Didn't know he went to jail, Liam.
This is what I'll bring in the last day of school.
What?
Said this is what I'll bring in the last day of school.
I don't know if you want to do that, pal. You'll probably get pulled over by the metal detector people. And they'll be like, yeah, it looks like you're a terrorist, so you can take pictures with the normal one. Yeah, I know, but they don't know that. It looks like anything else. Now I'm gonna take pictures of this armored car real quick while taking a video, yes. Skibbity.
It all stemmed from the
Card
small display.
may be damaged. Uh-oh. It shouldn't be.
Like, how about next month? Or like,
Yeah, it seems to be fine.
maybe not next month, maybe a year from now. If that hurts, you're like, oh,
There's the
we gotta understand.
gun thingy-majiggy. I should be aiming this thing a bit better. Boop. What does it say over here? I don't know why the flash is on. It just decided to be. Saint Shimon, I mean, the Schneider. Same thing, totally. Yeah, probably.
Visitors out.
No, there's still some people.
Well, gotta be the last one.
I mispronounced French words on purpose.
Okay. Works for. Okay.
is designed to sustain fire. It was a water-cooled gun, so it has a water cooling reactor, similar to the Victories you see on the other side of the field. And the cooling reactor was to cool the barrel down enough to where the gun would heat up so hot that it was actually setting off the ammunition before it even got into the gun because it was so hot. That's how they managed to keep the weapon friction from the firearms through World War I. By World War II, they offered a large array of air-cooled weapons that were lighter weight because you don't have to carry water, you don't have to worry about the water jacket being punctured